Here's where Christianity went wrong, and it all goes back to Paul. So let's take a deep dive on who was Paul, where did he come from, and what did he teach. Paul was a Jew. He was originally a Pharisee, which means a strict follower of Jewish law, and he lived around the time of the earliest Christians. Paul never met Jesus during Jesus' lifetime. His own letters kind of confirm this, and he only started following Jesus after he claimed to have a vision after the crucifixion. While Jesus was actually alive, he was one of the biggest enemies of the followers of Jesus. He approved killings, he persecuted, he imprisoned believers, and he admitted this later in his life in Galatians 1:13. He did not believe in Jesus before Jesus ascended, only after Jesus ascended. So that's going to become important later on. Paul laid the groundwork for what is today known as the Trinity. He was the first one to write about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He didn't define it as a Trinity, but he laid the groundwork where a couple hundred years later, the Trinity became a staple of Christianity. He was the first person to introduce worshiping Jesus. He was the first known writer to call Jesus divine. Nobody at the time worshiped Jesus because Jesus always said, worship the Father. So those are the facts regarding Paul and who he was. Key facts were during the time of Jesus, he never met him, and he persecuted any followers of Jesus, killing some of them and imprisoning others. After Jesus ascended, Paul, one day on his way to Damascus, had a vision and claimed that he is now a follower of Jesus. Kind of suspicious if you think about it. So let's take a step back, zoom out, think about this logically and from a common sense standpoint, and put ourselves in Paul's shoes. Assume that we are Paul. We are Paul. Paul is somebody who hates Jesus. He thinks Jesus is a false Messiah, a false prophet, and he persecutes, imprisons the followers of Jesus. One day, Jesus is gone. He ascends or dies or whatever Paul thinks happens. And I think what happened here is Paul had this genius idea because he thought Jesus was a false prophet. And he had this ingenious idea, really, to claim that he had some vision from Jesus and that he's going to now become a follower of Jesus, and he's going to spend and devote his life to distorting the teachings of Jesus and changing what Jesus preached and giving the complete opposite so that the people that follow Jesus would be led astray. And that's exactly what he did with what you see with today is everyone worshiping this Holy Trinity and worshiping Jesus, even though Jesus said worship the Father, aka God. This makes sense if you think about it, because somebody who hated Jesus and thought Jesus was a false prophet, of course, it's very convenient for him once Jesus is gone to claim, I've had a revelation and I'm going to now change all the laws around Christianity to be the complete opposite of what Jesus preached and what Jesus practiced. For example, Paul is the one that says it's okay to eat pork, while Jesus, as the perfect example, never ate pork and never said that it would be okay to eat pork. If Jesus wanted that to be the case, if that was part of the divine command from God through Jesus as a prophet, then Jesus would have said so. But that never came until after Jesus ascended and Paul said, you can eat pork. Jesus never said, worship me. Rather, it was Paul that introduced the worship of Jesus. So now you have Christianity worshiping a man, a prophet of God, instead of actually worshiping God the way that Jesus worshiped him. And he came up with this framework of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, causing a very confusing identity for who God really is in this very loopholey kind of way of looking at the